31-year-old software engineer in Paris. Good salary. Nice apartment in the 11th arrondissement. A startup job everyone envied. In 2019, Julien packed 2 suitcases and flew to Berlin. Not because he was broke, because after taxes, social charges, and insane Paris rent, he was keeping less than 40 cents of every euro he earned. His German friend doing the exact same job, 62 cents. Julien isn't some outlier. France's own statistics show over 2.5 million French citizens now live permanently abroad, and the number is speeding up. On paper, France still looks like a giant. 7th largest economy, nuclear weapons, UN Security Council seat, Louis Vuitton, Hermes, Chanel, the brands that scream wealth to the entire planet. But peel back the luxury branding, and the real numbers tell a different story. A story the French elite have spent decades trying to hide. And if France falls, it takes the euro with it. The euro is the foundation under half of Europe's savings, pensions, and mortgages. This isn't France's problem. It might be yours. To understand today's France, you have to go back to 1945. The country is in ruins. Factories bombed flat. Railways destroyed. A quarter of all housing gone. Once arrival to Britain as an industrial powerhouse. Now begging America for Marshall Plan cash, General de Gaulle faces an impossible question. How do you rebuild a broken nation? He rejects pure American capitalism. He rejects Soviet communism. Instead, he creates something uniquely French. Dirigisme, state direction of the economy. Capitalism on paper, but the state controls everything that matters. And here's the dangerous part. It worked. From 1945 to 1975, France booms at 5% growth a year. The middle class explodes. They build the TGV, launch nuclear power, make cars the world wants. The French still call this era les 30 glorieuses, the 30 glorieuses, but that success planted a poison pill in the national psyche. The state is smarter than the market. Give the government enough power and money, and it can fix anything. That belief became the foundation for everything that came next. And everything that came next was a slow-motion disaster. The bullet entered the body on one specific night. May 10th, 1981. François Mitterrand appears on television, the first socialist president of the Fifth Republic. Picture the scene. The richest, most mobile people in France watch the news that night. They don't cheer. They start making phone calls. Look at the rest of the world at that exact moment. Reagan slashing taxes in America. Thatcher smashing unions in Britain. The West was turning away from big government. France went the opposite direction. Within months, Mitterrand launches the biggest nationalization wave in Western history, seizing 36 private banks overnight. They drop the retirement age from 65 to 60, right as life expectancy is rising. Add a 5th week of paid vacation. Cut the work week. Raise minimum wage 10%. Paris is euphoric. The socialists think they've invented a way to legislate prosperity. Markets have another word for it. Capital flees. Inflation spikes to 14%. The franc collapses, devalued 3 times in 2 years. By 1983, France is hemorrhaging money and knocking on the IMF's door. Mitterrand makes a famous U-turn, the tournant de la rigueur. He cuts spending. He stops new nationalizations. But here's what almost nobody talks about. He changed the policy, but he never dismantled the machine. The lower retirement age stayed. The bureaucracy stayed. The welfare promises stayed. And worst of all, the psychology was locked in. Government spending jumped from 46% of GDP in 1980, and today sits at 57%, the highest in the entire developed world, higher than Sweden, higher than China. France isn't a social democracy with luxury boutiques. It's a command economy with a gift shop in the lobby. Drive from Paris toward the German border, and the difference hits you in the face. French side. Beautiful rolling hills, vineyards, villages frozen in time. Cross the Rhine into Germany, smokestacks, freight trains heavy with steel, chemical plants running around the clock. In 1980, manufacturing made up 24% of France's economy. Today, it's down to roughly 9 or 10%, lower than Germany, lower than Italy, lower than Greece in some metrics. France, the country that invented the TGV and built the Concorde, has become an industrial desert. This wasn't an accident. The technocrats who run everything called it the Faiblesse Society. Let China make the stuff. France will sell the ideas, the design, the luxury lifestyle. So they taxed factories into oblivion, piled on regulations that made hiring a French worker insanely expensive. Companies did what rational companies do. They left. The CAC 40 is dominated by luxury. LVMH, Kering, Hermès, L'Oréal. The government loves pointing at Bernard Arnault and saying, "See? France still wins." But an economy built on selling 5,000 euro bags to Chinese millionaires and American tourists is not a real economy. It's a boutique. You can't build a broad middle class on luxury retail jobs. And then came the moment France couldn't pretend anymore. COVID exposed the fragility brutally. A G7 nuclear power begging China for face masks and paracetamol. The Fraiser Society turned out to be a society that quietly surrendered its ability to make anything the world actually needs. Today, France is in a hostage situation. The government knows, with cold mathematical certainty, that the model is unsustainable. Debt is now over 3.4 trillion euros and still climbing. In 2025, interest payments alone will exceed 55 billion euros, more than the entire defense budget. Every serious economist knows what needs to happen. But every time they try even tiny reforms, the streets explode. Yellow vests in 2018 over a few cents on fuel. Cities burning. Macron backs down and hands out billions. In 2023, raising retirement from 62 to 64 triggered nationwide chaos. Germany is at 67. The UK at 66. France rioted to defend retiring years earlier than everyone else. Macron had to force it through with emergency constitutional powers. That's not a policy debate. That's a government discovering it can no longer govern. The elite technocrats know the bill is coming. But they're trapped. Cut too hard and the streets burn. So they do the only thing left. Borrow more. Kick the can. France hasn't run a balanced budget since 1974. Not once. Boom or bust, left or right. Every leader spends more than the country earns and hands the problem to the next one. So here's where France stands right now. A mountain of debt, the highest government spending ratio in the developed world, an industrial base gutted to Southern European levels, a brain drain accelerating every year. Unlike Greece in 2010, just 2% of the Eurozone economy, France is the second largest. If markets ever stop buying French debt, there is no bailout big enough. Not Germany, not the ECB. The entire currency would be at risk. This isn't wild speculation. It's arithmetic. France won't collapse with a bang. The decline will stay elegant, managed, slow, just like the country itself. The lights stay on. The trains mostly run. Tourists still fill the Louvre, but the people who actually built France, the engineers, the factory workers, the nurses, are either leaving or staying behind, exhausted, feeding a system that's quietly running out of time. The numbers have already answered whether France can keep going this way. The only real question left is, when will France finally decide to read them? If you want more deep dives into the economies quietly fracturing the world order, hit subscribe and turn on notifications. Drop a comment below. Do you think France can still reverse this? Or has it already gone too far?